Hello guys, how's it going? Gear, congrats on getting first. He beat you, Odin. It was actually so funny. Odin, when you said, what did you say? That's a rarity, Gear, you earned it. That's so funny. Welcome in, how's it going, guys? Hi, pigs. Hi, Ezra, getting work done while this is in the background. Won't be a chat, have a fun stream, no worries. I hope that this stream is good background noise for you, and I hope you're very productive. Hi, Odin. Hi, Toke. It's hard to be a Nisamond. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. It's not a meme, but it is funny. That's why I put it in memes. That's fair. That's fair. I guess not everything that's funny is a meme. And not every meme is funny. So you're right. You're right. Thank you for the Fox Ears Redeem Bigs. Starting us off strong. Boom. Do I have the timer? Yes, I do. Okay. Hi, Lone. Welcome in. I hope you're doing well. Ezra, by the way, here's your head pats. And Pigs, here's your head pats. Thank you guys for the redeem. If you are confused why I'm talking really quietly, I always like to start these Monday streams off with this because I feel like some people might not know. If you don't know, and a lot of people like are here on Saturday for Gardeck and they follow me, and then they might come into the stream and be like, what the hell is going on? Can you speak up? Get out of your dirt pile. But yeah, I do chill, soft-spoken reading on Mondays, except for last week. Last week we played Balatro instead, but I was just like in this very, what's the right word I'm looking for? I don't know, rabid state of addiction to Balatro last week. I'm chill now. I still like it, but I needed to play it to survive. But now we're back to reading. Get out of here, Mike. I just get really shy, exactly, Lone. But hi, TP, hi, Mike, hi, Weasley, how are you? Here's your head pads, Weasley. How's your pizza? What kind of pizza do you have? Hi, Luna, what's up, Luna? Here's your head pads, how are you? Is it so that you eventually have just a little overlook over when it could go hen to be finished is also a huge meme. I have many questions. That means nothing to me. What else did I need to say? Well, welcome in, guys. I hope you're having a good week, a good Monday. I guess the week just started, so I low-key have a sore throat today, and so we'll see how this goes. I have my tea, I have my water. I gotta drink this before it gets cold. Sitting in the parking lot at work. I'm sorry. I appreciate you always coming in before you work. Meat Lovers, that's the best. I like Meat Lovers pizza and I like Supreme pizza. Non-shy people scare me. I'm like, I consider myself an introvert, but I'm like, in social situations, I'm kind of like a yapper. So I might scare you. I'm just starting to get addicted to going to the gym. I feel bad if I don't go. That's like not the worst thing to get addicted to though, you know, because it's like a good hobby, a good habit. Could be like drugs. But he said maybe it's the pre-workout I drink. Okay, well that's different. If you're just doing it for the pre-workout. Hi, Legendary. Here's your head pads. Welcome in. How are you doing? TP said I just updated OBS and StreamerBot, so once I test it, I'll let. Yay! I'm excited. Yes, thank you for shouting out Turd Pile Odin. I'm sorry, I was really late to mentioning this shout out, but thank you for shouting him out. If you guys don't know, Turd Pile is also an ASMR streamer. I like, you know, I'm in the ASMR category. I wouldn't even consider myself like a full ASMR streamer, obviously, because I only do it once a week, but like, he's like your traditional ASMR. If you like that, you should definitely follow him. And he does not lick your ears, so keep that in mind. If you want that, maybe you want, maybe don't follow. Just kidding, follow him anyway. I'm the type of introvert who will go up to strangers. That's how I am. Like, I'm an introvert in the sense that I like need a lot of alone time, and like I recharge by like chilling by myself. But like like I will feel tired if it's like a really long social interaction, or I do like multiple days of like social interaction, you know. But when I'm like in a group of people, I feel like I can come across as extroverted because I will like just talk to random people and shit. I'm doing good, Legendary, except for my throat. Like, I don't know what happened. It was like halfway through the day yesterday, I like randomly started getting a sore throat, and usually I feel like it's when you wake up and you have a sore throat, but like it just like appeared halfway through the day, and I was like, oh, no, please don't be getting sick. So I'm trying to chug water. I'm trying to go to bed early to like nip it in the bud, but I still wanted to stream. I'm still feeling good except for like the little scratchiness, so we're out here. Hi Bonnie, how are you? It's so good to see you. Thanks for coming in. I'm not gonna drink pre-workout if I'm not gonna work out. I mean, you could. I actually don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I don't fully know what pre-workout is. I know it's something people take before their workout. What does it do? Does it just like hype you up? Is it caffeine? I need yappers too. Exercise is addictive. Your body releases all kinds of feel-good chemicals when you work out. The caffeine is a bonus. Okay, that's fair. So, but that, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like a good thing to get addicted to because it's like a good habit. As long as you're not like pushing yourself. Insane Writer, welcome in. It's going well. How are you? I'll lick your ears if you want. TP's too. Yes, the romance. You don't even understand. Wait, I can't keep track of the messages I've already read. Going out of order. I'm good. I'm good, Bonnie. Thank you for asking. I'm getting my new ice fishing shelter this week, and I'm looking at all the ice fishing shelter? That's so sick, Legendary. What accessories can you get? Pre-workout is like an energy drink on steroids. Some have creatine or caffeine, just normal stuff. Is creatine normal? Okay, this is good to know though. This is good to know. Does everybody take it? Like, how many people take pre-workout when they work out? Could be worse. I feel you. It's caffeine, B vitamins, along with stuff that promotes muscle growth like creatine. Some have tribulus as well, which doesn't do shit, but people think it increases testosterone. All tribulus does is make you horny. Pre-workout makes you horny? Actually, mine doesn't have creatine. It has caffeine and supplements. Okay, that's fair. What was I gonna say? I don't remember what I was gonna say. Welcome in, guys. We will be reading a book today, which we have been doing every Monday. We are in the middle of reading Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. We'll get into it in a little bit. I just obviously I'm a yapper, so we be yapping for a little bit, but if you need to get cozy, if you want to get a little cup of tea, if you want to get a snack, just want to get under the blankets, now is the time. This stream is very, very lurker friendly, obviously, since I'm just going to be reading a book out loud most of the time. So if you want to co-work, if you just want to lay down, if you want to play a game, do whatever you gotta do. I'm just here to read. If you want to pay attention to the story, that's cool too. I'll probably do a little recap. We've been going to Cliff Notes and doing the past few chapter recap every time because I forget what's been going on in the book and I'm kind of paying attention. So I'm mainly because I'm unmotivated to move and it gets me motivated as a first step. That's valid. If you need it to even get to the gym, I can get behind that. It's okay, whatever gets you there, Actually just started also working out, but I do very chill stuff. I literally just walk on the treadmill or walk on the stair machines, and it's because I work from home now. I mean, it's not I was moving a lot when I worked in person, but I was still walking more than I am now, where I just sit at my desk all day. So I'm okay, I need to do some exercise so my bones don't crumble. I'm EP, time to drink energy. Luna, you should have some pre-workout. Lighting, fishing pole holders, cup holders, shelves, there's a lot. That sounds so fun, Legendary. Even though I know if I ever ice fished, it would just be miserable because I can't stand the cold. But at the same time, just thinking about being all bundled up and just chilling and fishing, that does sound kind of fun. Big said, who's getting under the blankets with me? Guys, who's getting under the blankies with Big? Bigs. Sorry, I don't know why, just Big. I'm gonna get super cozy by diving into solo queue. quite the different vibes you got going on with the stream and League of Legends, but I respect it, Weasley. I respect it. I'm sending you my luck. Pre-workout has been shown to increase performance on a whole for workouts. Things like BCAAs and supplemental amino acids don't really do anything unless you're already pretty deficient in protein in your diet. I don't know what BCAAs are. My gym has a pool. Oh, that's kind of fun, Mike. My apartment building has a pool, but it's like, hold on, I'm gonna cough. I just got like the worst took in my throat. My apartment has a pool, but it's like outdoors, so it's closed right now. Writer said, I have no idea whether or not I do another chapter. I don't really have to, but that'd be another day off at the end of the month. Listen, you gotta do whatever boats your float, but this is perfect time to co-work and just chill. So if you're feeling up to it, I say go for it. Then you can chill at the end of the month. Going to be 70 degrees or better in the shelter. Okay, then I could do it. Like, that's pretty nice. All right. Oh, branch chain amino acids, pre-proteins. Okay. I dance twice a week, so I just use my pull-up bar and rings. Oh, you dance. Oh wait, I think I knew that you danced. I'm not motivated to go out more than that. That's still pretty good. Like, sorry, I got a burp. You have a pull-up bar and rings at home. That's pretty sick. Okay, I think I got this stuff out of my throat. Wouldn't be in there if it didn't serve a purpose. Actually, I'm pretty sure because improve your workout by decreasing your muscle breakdown throughout your exercises. There's so much science involved in this. Holy shit. Okay. Let me see here if I can find. I had the tab open for the summary. I found it. Also, wait, guys. I don't want anybody to talk about. Okay, I'm gonna bring it up. My Christmas tree. I started putting the lights on it, and then I obviously ran out. But I have a second strand of light, so I was like, okay, we're gonna finish it with the second strand of lights. But then it was like the lights, the second strand was like a USB plug, and I don't have like a block to plug it into the wall outlet, so I can't plug it in. So that's just what we have. But I think it's pretty cute anyways. What's up, Dylan? 867-5309-99999. I have no idea what that means, but absolutely. How are you? She's me coded. For what purpose? The Christmas tree? What did I do? The song? 867-5309. Yeah, I've heard that. I can't sing any more of it though. 867, and that was also like really off key. 867-5309. Eight 675-309. Jenny, don't change your number. Preacher curls are like my favorite because it's a very targeting exercise. What is a preacher curl? I'm gonna look that up. Preacher curls. Okay, it's like going like this. The other way, and you're like, ooh, like that. Ooh. Why is that called preacher? You know, wait, I didn't realize at first. Okay, I thought he was just spamming numbers, but then once they said it was a song, I was like, okay, yeah, that song. I swear. My intrusive thoughts want someone to hit me with that buster blade. You want to get hit with the trident too? Do like a double whammy, like. Boxe, yes, Dylan. I think I mentioned before, but I used to live in a place where the sub area code was 867. I called that number at one point and it went straight to voicemail where dude called out. Wait, that's so funny. So it was actually like somebody's real phone number and they like put in their voicemail like, don't mention Jenny or what? I just want to be hit. There you go. That was me slapping you. What is this song? Also, if the music is like too loud or anything or too quiet, I know it's probably really quiet, but I try to keep it like that because I want the main focus to be the readings. But let me know your preferences if anybody has opinions. Odin. Actually have the explanation to your question about preacher girls. It's named because the bench they're performed on resembles a slanted pulpit. Oh shit, I gotta look it up again. Wait, hold on. Oh, you're right, I do see it. Because it's like this kind of like square thing, like tilted down, you know? Kind of cool. Oh, okay, now I'm like scrolling through Google images of people working out. Go away. Alright. Alright, I'm gonna change scenes really quick. I'm gonna hide this. Chat will go away on the screen. The good thing about my like book window is that I'm pretty sure it covers my weird ass Christmas tree. Let's see. Wait, where's my book? Where's my book thing? I just had it. Oh, it's right here. Oh wait, you guys can't see it yet, can you? Oh no, okay, I'm sorry, I'm a mess. Sometimes I use like the studio mode in OBS. If anybody knows that, if anybody's a streamer and has used studio mode, it's actually really nice if you want to like change things during your stream. You can do it without doing it live, so you can like check it first and then push it live, if that makes sense. But then sometimes I'll be like changing stuff and I think that you guys can see it, but you can't because I'm like in studio mode. How do you activate it? I'm pretty sure just like by default Weasley, there should be a button in the like little control panel that says studio mode, and it'll bring up like a copy of the current scene you're on the left, and then if you click on a new scene, it'll only change like the left pane. So you should have two scenes at that point. You should have like the one you just clicked on and then the one that's being broadcasted to the viewer. And then you can like change stuff around in the one you just clicked on and you could still be on something else, if that makes sense. Sure, there's better explanations out there, but that was my version. Okay, gamers, I'm gonna read some summaries of the past few chapters we've been going through. So like I said, this is Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Also preemptive apology for the words I mispronounce. Lots of these French words and just like old words I just butcher. But luckily Odin sometimes corrects me and I thank him for that. I'm a lurk. I'm gonna be on stream on another tab. I haven't seen this in my Rocket League day. Oh, that's so cool, Dylan. Thank you for lurking. I appreciate it. Omelet, country fried steak, and gravy. Sounds good. Oh yeah, my question of the day is, what is your favorite breakfast food? Breakfast is my favorite meal. Also, I know Odin answered earlier, but I missed your answer. So if you want to send it again, Odin, you can. I see it now. You're good. You're good, Weasley. There's a lot of things in OBS that are like just goofy, you know? Okay, so I believe we're on chapter 20 for today. We're on book 2, chapter 20, and then we just have like book 3. We're very close to the end, like low key. Might be done in a couple streams. Benji, thank you for following. Welcome in. So let's read maybe 16, 17, we'll just read 17, 18, 19 summary. And we don't care about the analysis. This is not English class. This is just book reading. Here's your headpats. Benji, thank you for the redeem. Bacon, eggs, scrambled with cheese and hot sauce. Yes, that's so good, Odin. Scrambled eggs with cheese is so good. I love scrambled eggs with cheese and like green bell peppers. That is so good. Hi, Michael. Here's your head pats. How are you, Michael? Welcome in. Cocoa Pops or Cocoa Puffs? Oh, Cocoa Puffs. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. All right. Excuse me. Chapter 17. Alright, the night before Lucy's wedding, she and her father sit outside and discuss her upcoming marriage. Lucy tells her father how happy she is and assures him that her love for Darnay will not interfere with their relationship. Dr. Alexander Manette responds by telling her that marriage is a natural step for her to take and that he is grateful that his imprisonment has not shadowed her life as it has his. He relates to her that when he was in prison, he would think of the child. He relays to her, maybe? That's supposed to be? I don't know. Sorry, that when he was in prison, he would think of the child he had never known and wonder what its fate was. No matter what he imagined, though, he could never have imagined the degree of happiness that Lucy brought into his life. Oh yeah, and then he, like, descended back into his old self, I think, right? Klapp Samen Schmorbrot is my fave, look it up. I'll look it up in a minute, Toke. I like mixing my eggs up with Worcestershire sauce. I make my eggs the way my abuela used to. Walter loves them, but for some reason she can't figure out how to do it herself. Like just scrambled eggs? Or like the ingredients and shit. One of my favorite things to do is make an egg McMuffin with a bagel. That sounds good, right? That sounds good. I used to love making homemade breakfast sandwiches as well, but I can't do it every day because they're kind of a lot of effort. She can't just like scramble the eggs. Alright. Chapter 18. On the morning of Lucy and Darnay's wedding, Dr. Alexander Manette and Darnay engage in a private discussion. Afterwards, the doctor is very pale but composed. Lucy and Darnay are married and depart on a 2-week honeymoon. Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross escort a subdued Dr. Manette home. Observing hints of the doctor's former mental incapacity, Mr. Lorry tells Miss Pross that although he must take care of some business, he will return soon. When he returns, the doctor has regressed to his previous state of total absorption in his shoemaking and appears not to know Mr. Lorry or Miss Pross. The situation continues for 9 days, and Mr. Lorry arranges that neither the doctor's patients nor Lucy and Darnay know about the doctor's relapse. Mr. Lorry also takes an unprecedented leave of absence from Tellson's to stay at the Manette home and watch over his friend. Apparently it's different, I just know it's how my abuela made them. Honestly, like, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but scrambling eggs, you would think, always turns out the same, but some people do it like so differently. And I've had like really good scrambled eggs and like really terrible scrambled eggs. I guess just depending on like if you add things and what you add and like how long you cook it and your technique you use to cook it. Like I've had some terrible scrambled eggs, but then like delicious ones. So I guess it kind of makes sense. I roll my eggs. What does that mean, Pigs? I drink my eggs. Are you like the type of person who literally like takes a raw egg and like slurps it down? I do the eggs in the microwave. Okay, listen, writer, this is a safe space. I'm not judging, but I tried that one time in college because I saw like, this is dumb, but I literally saw a TikTok that was like, oh, best way to microwave your eggs, like it's so fast, it's pretty good. And I tried it and like, oh my god, it was the most disgusting thing I've ever done. But again, I could have just made it weirdly, but I will never again microwave eggs. If you like it though, all power to you. Cocoa Puffs are great because you get cereal and a chocolate milkshake. Okay, I feel like I was weird as a kid because when I had Cocoa Puffs specifically, or any other cereal that like made the milk chocolatey or like made the milk really flavorful, the milk grossed me out. I would never drink it. I would still eat the cereal with milk, but like some people would straight up drink that, like the leftover. I would never do that. Again, though, whatever floats your boat, no judgment. I sometimes do when I'm in a hurry. You are crazy. You are powerful. Okay, we got fucking fucking what's his name? Fuck. Gaston in the chat, bro. When you said I like to eat 4 dozen eggs, I just read that message and I was like, if this is a fucking Gaston reference, and then it was. I break it and mix it in a bowl, pour it in a pan, scramble it lightly for it to cook, and let it sit for it to solidify enough for me to roll. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. I'm sorry, when you said I roll my eggs, I was just like thinking of like a whole uncracked egg and that you just like roll around, and I thought you were just shit posting. Scramble them in a bowl beforehand, mix in some salt, pepper, maybe garlic. I fry them in a bit of bacon grease. The difference is how I fold them while cooking. That's like the biggest, I feel like that's like the most important part when making eggs Odin, is literally how you cook them and like how you fold it, because that changes the texture so much. And like if you want them to be like dry versus runny, like you have to do things differently. I feel like it's not the best way, but I find it tastes the best. That's fair. And you're right, it does save a lot of time, and like you don't have to get a spatula out and like do all that jazz. So I get you. Y'all just waste the shell. Please don't say you eat it, or what do you do with it? All right, this is chapter 19. This is the most recent chapter we read a couple weeks ago. So, on the 10th morning, Dr. Alexander Manette awakens fully recovered and unaware that anything unusual has transpired. Mr. Lorry tactfully conveys to the doctor what has happened and asks what caused the relapse and how it can be prevented. The doctor explains that he expected the relapse, which was caused by the revival of certain memories. Sorry, I keep burping. He believes that the worst is over and doubts that another relapse could occur. If one did, it would most likely result from an intense experience that revived those same memories. Mr. Lorry also questions the wisdom of keeping the shoemaking bench and materials, pointing out that their presence reminds the doctor of the past that has caused him so much pain. Uneasily agreeing, Dr. Manette requests that Mr. Lorry dispose of the bench and tools without him. Therefore, Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross bury the tools and burn the shoemaking bench after the doctor leaves to join Lucy and Darnay on their trip. It's crazy up in here, okay. That is a recap. Let me look up Toke's breakfast now. Klap Zamen Schmorbrot. Sorry, I know the view isn't ideal for you guys, but whatever the hell this is looks pretty good. It's like a sandwich. Open face sandwich. I don't know exactly what ingredients are involved, but it looks pretty tasty, pretty fresh. Is that like shrimp? Shrimp for breakfast? One of the few Disney characters whose range I can sing because it's always villains. Gaston's song is like the best song in that show, though. Prove me wrong, you cannot. Oh, I should have requested that for my Odin song. That would have been good. It's a convenience. If I cared enough, I would do a proper omelet. Yeah, I get you. I used to like be obsessed with making omelets. I had like a phase where I would make them like all the time in high school, but then I didn't even like get tired of them. I just like stopped because those took a decent amount of work to make. I was just looking at Schmorbrot. Yes. I was asking you what's on it. Is there shrimp, or was that just like one picture I saw? Let It Go. Let It Go is such a good song. Playing it on guitar is kind of cool. The thing about it is you could literally put anything on it. Oh, okay. So that's kind of the point. Because I didn't go into any articles. I was just looking at pictures. And I was like, I can't tell what's on this because it looks like so much different options. Oh, I need it for any meal. Okay. Gaston is not Gaston's villain song, it's LeFou's the mob song, I guess. That is a hot take. I'm trying to think. I don't know like the mob song well enough. I like helped, I wouldn't even say helped direct, but I was like an assistant like leader of a Beauty and the Beast performance. It was for like, I think it was the grades like 2 through 8 or something, and I was like in high school, so that it was with my theater company, so I like knew Beauty and the Beast a lot, the musical at least, which I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar to the movie. I don't remember the mob song that well though, but if Gaston is like not, is he singing for most of it? Because if he's like taking the lead, which I'm assuming he is, then maybe. But you're right, LeFou was like gassing up Gaston, like, but LeFou isn't really a villain, he's just kind of there, like he's just kind of goofy, like exciting. Thank you, Gear, I appreciate it. Eggs. Do you eat eggs raw, Gear? Look up liver postage. Okay, and then we'll start reading in a few minutes, so thank you guys for your patience as I yap away. Liver postage. Okay, I'm a little scared right now, but I'm keeping an open mind, Toke. Liver pate. It's yum, I swear. I would like, if you didn't tell me what it was, I would probably like take a bite and maybe then I would like it, but now that I know that it's like liver, I might not enjoy it, you know? Like I shouldn't have found out this way. But again, open-minded. Gaston gets maybe 3 lines in Gaston. He does the first couple full bars of mob song. He's entirely, that's true, you're right, he is passive in Gaston. He's just letting his buddy gas him up. Thank you for the lurk, Odin. Either scrambled or fried. Okay, based. What about omelet, Gear? Looks like an evil brownie in disguise. That's a great way of looking at it, Weasley. It's grinded up liver slammed into a foul paste. You're not making it sound better when you use the word foul to describe it. I'm gonna be real though, I've never had liver, but just like the thought of it is gross to me, so it could be good. I'm just gonna be open about that because I can't truly say I hate it when I've never had it, so I could like liver postage. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of water. Have you ever had a hot dog? Touche. Yes, I have, and I love hot dogs. Hot dogs are pretty gross if you think about it, but they are good. Okay, let's get the book up. Here we go. Make this a little bigger. Mic in front of my face. They come from where poop comes from. Alright, I'm gonna stop you there. Don't ruin hot dogs. Alright, let me post my message into the chat. Basically, I won't yuck your yum. Okay, we will agree to not yuck each other's yums. I am going to pin my message that says I am reading the chat, but I probably won't respond to things unless it's like a chapter break or like a paragraph break in between pause in the story or something like that. So yeah, that's my PSA, but we will start. Welcome back, Dylan. Go buy that energy, Mike. Alrighty, here we go. Chapter 20. A plea. When the newly married pair came home, the first person who appeared to offer his congratulations was Sidney Carton. They had not been at home many hours when he presented himself. He was not improved in habits, or in looks, or in manner, but there was a certain rugged air of fidelity about him, which was new to the observation of Charles Darnay. Hi, Dynamite, welcome in. He watched his opportunity of taking Darnay aside into a window and of speaking to him when no one overheard. "Mr. Darnay," said Carton, "I wish we might be friends. We are already friends, I hope." "You are good enough to say so, as a fashion of speech, but I don't mean any fashion of speech. Indeed, when I say I wish we might be friends, I scarcely mean quite that either." I speak your name while whispering. Dynamite, thank you for the subscription for 3 months. You've been subscribed for 6 months. I appreciate it so much. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, thank you. Charles Darnay, as was natural, asked him in all good humor and good fellowship what did he mean. "Upon my life," said Carton, smiling, "I find that easier to comprehend in my own mind than to convey to yours. However, let me try. You remember a certain famous occasion when I was more drunk than usual?" "I remember a certain famous occasion when you forced me to confess that you had been drinking." "I remember it too. The curse of those occasions is heavy upon me, for I always remember them. I hope it may be taken into account one day when all days are at an end for me. Don't be alarmed, I am not going to preach." "I am not at all alarmed. Earnestness in you is anything but alarming to me." "Ah," said Carton, with a careless wave of his hand, as if he waved that away. "On the drunken occasion in question, one of a large number, as you know, I was insufferable about liking you and not liking you. I wish you would forget it." "I forgot it long ago." Fashion of speech again. "But Mr. Darnay, oblivion is not so easy to me, as you represent it to be you. I have by no means forgotten it, and a light answer does not help me to forget it." "If it was a light answer," returned Darnay, "I beg your forgiveness for it. I had no other object than to turn a slight thing, which, to my surprise, seems to trouble you too much aside. I declare to you, on the faith of a gentleman, that I have long dismissed it from my mind. Good heaven, what was there to dismiss? Have I had nothing more important to remember in the great service you rendered me that day?" "As to the great service," said Carton, "I am bound to avow to you, when you speak of it in that way, that it was mere professional claptrap. I don't know that I cared what became of you when I rendered it. Mind, I say when I rendered it, I am speaking of the past." "You make light of the obligation," returned Darnay, "but I will not quarrel with your light answer." "Genuine truth, Mr. Darnay, trust me. I have gone aside from my purpose. I was speaking about our being friends. Now, you know me. You know I am incapable of all the higher and better flights of men. If you doubt it, ask Stryver and he'll tell you so. I prefer to form my own opinion without the aid of his. Well, at any rate, you know me as a dissolute dog who has never done any good and never will. I don't know that you never will, but I do, and you must take my word for it. Well, if you could endure to have such a worthless fellow, and a fellow of such indifferent reputation, coming and going at odd times, I should ask that I might be permitted to come and go as a privileged person here, that I might be regarded as a useless, and I would add, if it were not for the resemblance I detected between you and me, an unornamental piece of furniture, tolerated for its old service, and taken no notice of. I doubt if I should abuse the permission. It is 100 to 1 if I should avail myself of it 4 times in a year. It would satisfy me, I dare say, to know that I had it. What's up, Chris? Welcome in. Dylan said everyone is playing Marvel Rivals. I'm so mad I can't. I don't have anything to play it on. I keep seeing something about a shark. Do you know anything about the shark? Will you try? That is another way of saying that I am placed on the footing I have indicated. I thank you, Darnay. I may use that freedom with your name? I think so, Carton, by this time. They shook hands upon it, and Sydney turned away. Within a minute afterwards, he was, to all outward appearance, as unsubstantial as ever. When he was gone, and in the course of an evening passed with Miss Pross, the doctor, and Mr. Lorry, Charles Darnay made some mention of this conversation in general terms, and spoke of Sydney Carton as a problem of carelessness and recklessness. He spoke of him, in short, not bitterly or meaning to bear hard upon him, but as anybody who saw him as he showed himself. He had no idea that this could dwell in the thoughts of his fair young wife, but when he afterwards joined her in their own rooms, he found her waiting for him with the old pretty lifting of the forehead, strongly marked. "We are thoughtful tonight," said Darnay, drawing his arm about her. "Yes, dearest Charles," with her hands on his breast, and the inquiring and attentive expression fixed upon him. "We are rather thoughtful tonight, for we have something on our mind tonight. What is it, my Lucy? Will you promise not to press one question on me if I beg you not to ask it?" "Will I promise? What will I not promise to my love?" What indeed, with his hand putting aside the golden hair from the cheek and his other hand against the heart that beat for him. "I think, Charles, poor Mr. Carton deserves more consideration and respect than you expressed for him tonight." "Indeed, my own, why so?" "That is what you are not to ask me, but I know he does. If you know it, it is enough. What would you have me do, my life? I would ask you, dearest, to be very generous with him always, and very lenient on his faults when he is not by. I would ask you to believe that he has a heart he very, very seldom reveals, and that there are deep wounds in it. My dear, I have seen it bleeding." "It is a painful reflection to me," said Charles Darnay, quite astounded, "that I should have done him any wrong. I never thought this of him. My husband, it is so. I fear he is not to be reclaimed. There is scarcely a hope that anything in his character or fortunes is repairable now. But I am sure that he is capable of good things, gentle things, even magnanimous things." She looked so beautiful in the purity of her faith in this lost man that her husband could have looked at her as she was for hours. "And oh, my dearest love," she urged, clinging near to him, laying her head upon his breast and raising her eyes to his, "remember how strong we are in our happiness and how weak he is in his misery. I just set my cup down really loud. The supplication touched him home. "I will always remember it, dear heart. I will remember it as long as I live." He bent over the golden head and put the rosy lips to his and folded her in his arms. If one forlorn wanderer then pacing the dark streets could have heard her innocent disclosure, and could have seen the drops of pity kissed away by her husband from the soft blue eyes, so loving of that husband, he might have cried to the night, and the words would not have parted from his lips for the first time. God bless her for her sweet compassion. That was a really short chapter. That was chapter 20. Big said the shark is awesome. I keep seeing people on Twitter like being mean about the shark. Like they're like, "this shark sucks." So I just don't understand the meme about the shark, I guess. Is he a playable character? Or I gotta readjust. Alright. And I think Lucy is like saying all this shit because Sydney Carton like confessed his love to her and was like, "Man, I'm a terrible person." And now she's like, "Oh shit, I feel bad for him." Jeff, his name is Jeff. He's a saint. Oh, it's strong. Okay, that must be why people are saying they hate it, because it's like really strong. I didn't know why we were hating on him. Alright. Let's just jump right into the next chappy. All the Jeff haters can hate me. I'll send them your way, Dylan. Chapter 21, Echoing Footsteps. A wonderful corner for echoes. It has been remarked, that corner where the doctor lived, ever busily winding the golden thread which bound her husband and her father and herself, and her old directress and companion, in a life of quiet bliss. Lucy sat in the still house in the tranquilly resounding corner, listening to the echoing footsteps of years. At first, there were times, though she was a perfectly happy young wife, when her work would slowly fall from her hands and her eyes would be dimmed, for there was something coming in the echoes, something light, afar off, and scarcely audible yet, that stirred her heart too much. Fluttering hopes and doubts, hopes of a love as yet unknown to her, doubts of her remaining upon earth to enjoy that new delight, divided her breast. Among the echoes then, there would arise the sound of footsteps at her own early grave, and thoughts of the husband who would be left so desolate, and who would mourn for her so much, swelled to her eyes and broke like waves. That time passed, and her little Lucy lay on her bosom. Then, among the advancing echoes, there was the tread of her tiny feet and the sound of her prattling words. Let greater echoes resound as they would, the young mother at the cradle side could always hear those coming. They came, and the shady house was sunny with the child's laugh, and the divine friend of children, to whom in her trouble she had confided hers, seemed to take her child in his arms, as he took the child of old, and made it a sacred joy to her. Ever busily winding the golden thread that bound them all together, weaving the service of her happy influence through the tissue of all their lives and making it predominant nowhere, Lucy heard in the echoes of years none but friendly and soothing sounds. Her husband's step was strong and prosperous among them, her father's firm and equal. Lo, Miss Pross, in harness of string, awakening the echoes as an unruly charger, whip corrected, snorting and pawing the earth under the plane tree in the garden. Welcome back, Odin. Even when there were sounds of sorrow among the rest, they were not harsh nor cruel. Even when golden hair, like her own, lay in a halo on a pillow round the worn face of a little boy, and he said with a radiant smile, "Dear Papa and Mamma, I am very sorry to leave you both, and to leave my pretty sister, but I am called, and I must go." Those were not tears all of agony that wetted his young mother's cheek, as the spirit departed from her embrace that had been entrusted to it. Suffer them and forbid them not. They see my Father's face. O Father, blessed words. Thus, the rustling of an angel's wings got blended with the other echoes, and they were not wholly of earth, but had in them that breath of heavens. Sighs of the winds that blew over a little garden tomb were mingled with them also, and both were audible to Lucy, in a hushed murmur like the breathing of a summer sea asleep upon a sandy shore, as the little Lucy, comically studious at the task of the morning, or dressing a doll at her mother's footstool, chattered in the tongues of the two cities that were blended in her life. The echoes rarely answered to the actual tread of Sidney Carton. Some half-dozen times a year, at most, he claimed his privilege of coming in uninvited, and would sit among them through the evening, as he had once done often. He never came there heated with wine, and one other thing regarding him was whispered in the echoes, which has been whispered by all true echoes for ages and ages. Hi, Real Guts, welcome in. No man ever really loved a woman, lost her, and knew her with a blameless, though an unchanged mind, when she was a wife and a mother, but her children had a strange sympathy with him, an instinctive delicacy of pity for him. What fine hidden sensibilities are touched in such a case, no echoes tell, but it is so, and it was so here. Carton was the first stranger to whom little Lucy held out her chubby arms, and he kept his place with her as she grew. The little boy had spoken of him almost at the last. "Poor Carton, kiss him for me." Mr. Stryver shouldered his way through the law like some great engine forcing itself through turbid water, and dragged his useful friend in his wake like a boat towed astern. As the boat so favored is usually in a rough plight and mostly underwater, so Sydney had a swamped life of it. But easy and strong custom, unhappily so much easier and stronger than in him than any stimulating sense of desert or disgrace, made it the life he was to lead. Desert or disgrace made it the life he was to lead, and he no more thought of emerging from his state of lion's jackal than any real jackal may be supposed to think of rising to be a lion. Stryver was rich, had married a florid widow with property and 3 boys, who had nothing particularly shining about them but the straight hair of their dumpling heads. These 3 young gentlemen, Mr. Stryver, exuding patronage of the most offensive quality from every pore, had walked before him like 3 sheep to the quiet corner in Soho, and had offered as pupils to Lucy's husband, delicately saying, "Hello, here are 3 lumps of bread and cheese towards your matrimonial picnic, Darnay." The polite rejection of the 3 lumps of bread and cheese had quite bloated Mr. Stryver with indignation, which he afterwards turned to account in the training of the young gentlemen, by directing them to beware of the pride of beggars, like that Tudor fellow. He was also in the habit of declaiming to Mrs. Stryver, over his full-bodied wine, on the arts Mrs. Darnay had once put in practice to catch him, and on the diamond-cut diamond arts in himself, madam, which had rendered him not to be caught. Some of his King's Bench familiars, who were occasionally parties to the full-bodied wine and the lie, excused him for the latter by saying that he had told it so often that he believed it himself, which is surely such an incorrigible aggravation of an originally bad offense as to justify any such offenders being carried off to some suitably retired spot and there hanged out of the way. There were among the echoes to which Lucy, sometimes pensive, sometimes amused and laughing, listening in the echoed corner until her little daughter was 6 years old. How near to her heart the echoes of her child's tread came, and those of her own dear father's, always active and self-possessed, and those of her dear husband's need not be told, nor how the lightest echo of their united home, directed by herself with such a wise and elegant thrift that it was more abundant than any waste, was music to her, nor how there were echoes all about her, sweet in her ears, of the many times her father had told her that he found her more devoted to him married, if that could be, than single, and of the many times her husband had said to her that no cares and duties seemed to divide her love for him or her help to him, and asked her, "What is the magic secret, my darling, of your being everything to all of us, as if there were only one of us, yet never seeming to be hurried or to have too much to do?" But there were other echoes from a distance that rumbled menacingly in the corner all through this space of time, and it was now, about little Lucy's 6th birthday, that they began to have an awful sound as of a great storm in France with a dreadful sea rising. On a night in mid-July, 1789, Mr. Lorry came in late from Tellson's and sat himself down by Lucy and her husband in the dark window. It was a hot, wild night, and they were all 3 reminded of the old Sunday night when they had looked at the lightning from the same place. Welcome in, Steph. I hope you're doing well. "I began to think," said Mr. Lorry, pushing his brown wig back, "that I should have to pass the night at Tellson's. We have been so full of business all day that we have not known what to do first, or which way to turn. There is such an uneasiness in Paris that we have actually a run of confidence upon us. Our customers over there seem not to be able to confide their property to us fast enough. There is positively a mania among some of them for sending it to England. That has a bad look, said Darnay. A bad look, you say, my dear Darnay? Yes, but we don't know what reason there is in it. People are so unreasonable. Some of us at Tellson's are getting old, and we really can't be troubled out of the ordinary course without due occasion. Still, said Darnay, you know how gloomy and threatening the sky is. I know that, to be sure, assented Mr. Lorry, trying to persuade himself that his sweet temper was soured, and that he grumbled, but I am determined to be peevish after my long day's botheration. Where is Manette? Hard finding reading streamers, yes, every Monday. Welcome in, Steph. I'm glad you found me. I know I do it in the ASMR category. There's technically a reading category. I'm cheating. Where is Manette? Here he is, said the doctor, entering the dark room at the moment. I am quite glad you are at home, for these hurries and forebodings by which I have been surrounded all day long have made me nervous without reason. You are not going out, I hope? No, I am going to play backgammon with you if you like, said the doctor. I don't think I do like, if I may speak my mind. I am not fit to be pitted against you tonight. Is the tea-board still there, Lucy? I can't see. Of course, it has been kept for you. Thank you, my dear. The precious child is safe in bed and sleeping soundly. That's right, all safe and well. I don't know why anything should be otherwise than safe and well here, thank God, but I have been so put out all day, and I am not as young as I was. My tea, my dear, thank you. Now come and take your place in the circle, and let us sit quiet and hear the echoes about which you have your theory. Not a theory, it was a fancy. A fancy, then, my wise pet, said Mr. Lorry, patting her hand. They are very numerous and very loud, though, are they not? Only hear them. Headlong, mad and dangerous footsteps to force their way into anybody's life. Footsteps not easily made clean again if once stained red. The footsteps raging in St. Antoine afar off as the little circle sat in the dark London window. Thank you for following, I appreciate it. The reading, yeah, I noticed that too. I'm glad to hear it, Steph. It's very comforting for me to read out loud, so I'm glad you get enjoyment from it. St. Antoine had been, that morning, a vast dusky mass of scarecrows heaving to and fro, with frequent gleams of light above the billowy heads, where steel blades and bayonets shone in the sun. A tremendous roar arose from the throat of St. Antoine, and a forest of naked arms struggled in the air, like shriveled branches of trees in a winter wind, all the fingers convulsively clutching at every weapon or semblance of a weapon that was thrown up from the depths below, no matter how far off. Who gave them out, whence they last came, where they began, through what agency they crookedly quivered and jerked, scores at a time, over the heads of the crowd, like a kind of lightning, no eye in the throng could have told. But muskets were being distributed, so were cartridges, powder, and ball, bars of iron and wood, knives, axes, pikes, every weapon that distracted ingenuity could discover or devise. People who could lay hold of nothing else set themselves with bleeding hands to force stones and bricks out of their places in walls. Every pulse and heart in St. Antoine was on high fever strain and at high fever heat. Every living creature there held life as of no account and was demented with a passionate readiness to sacrifice it. Kazbox, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. I hope you're doing well. As a whirlpool of boiling waters has a center point, so all this raging circled round Defarge's wine shop, and every human drop in the cauldron had a tendency to be sucked towards the vortex, where Defarge himself, already begrimed with gunpowder and sweat, issued orders, issued arms, thrust this man back, dragged this man forward, disarmed one to arm another, labored and strove in the thickest of the uproar. "Keep near to me, Jacques 3, cried Defarge. "And do you, Jacques 1 and 2, separate and put yourselves at the head of as many of these patriots as you can. Where is my wife?" Well, here you see me," said Madame, composed as ever, but not knitting today. Madame's resolute right hand was occupied with an axe, in place of the usual softer implements, and in her girdle were a pistol and a cruel knife. "Where do you go, my wife?" "I go," said Madame, "with you at present. You shall see me at the head of women by and by." "Come then," cried Defarge in a resounding voice. "Patriots and friends, we are ready. The Bastille." With a roar that sounded as if all the breath in France had been shaped into the detested word, the living sea rose, wave on wave, depth on depth, and overflowed the city to that point. Alarm bells ringing, drums beating, the sea raging and thundering on its new beach, the attack began. Deep ditches, double drawbridge, massive stone walls, 8 great towers, cannon, muskets, fire and smoke. Through the fire and through the smoke, in the fire and in the smoke, for the sea cast him up against a cannon, and on the instant he became a cannoneer. Defarge of the wine shop worked like a manful soldier 2 fierce hours. Deep ditch, single drawbridge, massive stone walls, 8 great towers, cannon, muskets, fire and smoke. 1 drawbridge down. Work, comrades all, work. That was pronounced correctly. Work, Jacques 1, Jacques 2, Jacques 1000, Jacques 2000, Jacques 5 and 20,000. In the name of all the angels or the devils, which you prefer, work. Thus Defarge of the wine shop, still at his gun, which had long grown hot. "To me, woman," cried Madame, his wife. "What, we can kill as well as the men when the place is taken." And to her, with a shrill, thirsty cry, trooping women variously armed, but all armed alike in hunger and revenge. Cannon, muskets, fire and smoke, but still the deep ditch, the single drawbridge, the massive stone walls, and the 8 great towers. Slight displacements of the raging sea made by the falling wounded. Flashing weapons, blazing torches, smoking wagon loads of wet straw, hard work at neighboring barricades in all directions, shrieks, volleys, execrations, bravery without stint, boom, smash, and rattle, and the furious sounding of the living sea. But still the deep ditch, and the single drawbridge, and the massive stone walls, and the 8 great towers, and still Defarge of the wine shop at his gun, grown doubly hot by the service of 4 fierce hours. A white flag from within the fortress, and a parley, this dimly perceptible through the raging storm, nothing audible in it. Suddenly the sea rose immeasurably wider and higher, and swept Defarge of the wine shop over the lower drawbridge, past the massive stone outer walls, in among the 8 great towers surrendered. So resistless was the force of the ocean bearing him on, that even to draw his breath or turn his head was as impracticable as if he had been struggling in the surf at the South Sea, until he was landed in the outer courtyard of the Bastille. There, against an angle of a wall, he made a struggle to look about him. Jacques 3 was nearly at his side. Madame Defarge, still heading some of her women, was visible in the inner distance, and her knife was in her hand. Everywhere was tumult, exultation, deafening and maniacal bewilderment, astounding noise, yet furious dumb show. The prisoners, the records, the secret cells, the instruments of torture, the prisoners. Of all these cries and 10,000 incoherences, the prisoners was the cry most taken up by the sea that rushed in, as if there were an eternity of people, as well as of time and space. When the foremost billows rolled past, bearing the prison officers with them, and threatening them all with instant death if any secret nook remained undisclosed, Defarge laid his strong hand on the breast of one of these men, a man with a grey head who had a lighted torch in his hand, separated him from the rest, and got him between himself and the wall. "Show me the North Tower," said Defarge. "Quick." "I will faithfully," replied the man, "if you will come with me, but there is no one there." "What is the meaning of 105 North Tower?" asked Defarge. "Quick." "The meaning, monsieur? Does it mean a captive, or a place of captivity? Or do you mean that I shall strike you dead?" "Kill him," croaked Jacques Three, who had come close up. "Monsieur, it is a cell." "Show it me." "Pass this way, then." Jacques Three, with his usual craving on him, and evidently disappointed by the dialogue taking a turn that did not seem to promise bloodshed, held by Defarge's arm as he held by the turnkey's. Their three heads had been close together during this brief discourse, and it had been as much as they could do to hear one another. Even then, so tremendous was the noise of the living ocean, in its eruption into the fortress, and its inundation of the courts and passages and staircases. All around outside, too, it beat the walls with a deep, hoarse roar, from which, occasionally, some partial shouts of tumult broke and leaped into the air like spray. Through gloomy vaults where the light of day had never shone, past hideous doors of dark dens and cages, down cavernous flights of steps, and again up steep, rugged ascents of stone and brick, more like dry waterfalls than staircases, Defarge, the turnkey, and Jacques Three, linked hand in arm, went with all the speed they could make. Here and there, especially at first, the inundations started on them and swept by. But when they had done descending, and were winding and climbing up a tower, they were alone. Hemmed in here by the massive thickness of walls and arches, the storm within the fortress and without was only audible to them in a dull, subdued way, as if the noise out of which they had come had almost destroyed their sense of hearing. The turnkey stopped at a low door, put a key in a clashing lock, swung the door slowly open, and said, as they all bent their heads and passed in, 105 North Tower. There was a small, heavily grated, unglazed window high in the wall, with a stone screen before it, so that the sky could be only seen by stooping low and looking up. There was a small chimney, heavily barred across, a few feet within. There was a heap of old, feathery wood ashes on the hearth. There was a stool and table and a straw bed. There were the 4 blackened walls and a rusted iron ring in one of them. "Pass that torch slowly along these walls, that I may see them," said Defarge to the turnkey. The man obeyed, and Defarge followed the light closely with his eyes. "Stop. Look here, Jacques." "A.M., croaked Jacques Three as he read greedily. "Alexander Manette," said Defarge in his ear, following the letters with his swart forefinger, deeply ingrained with gunpowder. And here he wrote, "A poor physician." And it was he, without doubt, who scratched a calendar on this stone. "What is that in your hand? A crowbar? Give it me." He had still the linstock of his gun in his own hand. He made a sudden exchange of the 2 instruments, and turning on the worm-eaten stool and table, beat them to pieces in a few blows. "Hold the light higher," he said wrathfully to the turnkey. "Look among those fragments with care, Jacques. And see, here is my knife," throwing it to him. "Rip open that bed and search the straw. Hold the light higher, you." With a menacing look at the turnkey, he crawled upon the hearth, and, peering up the chimney, struck and prized at its sides with the crowbar, and worked at the iron grating across it. In a few minutes, some mortar and dust came dropping down, which he averted his face to avoid, and in it, and in the old wood ashes, and in a crevice in the chimney into which his weapon had slipped or wrought itself, he groped with a cautious touch. Nothing in the wood and nothing in the straw, Jacques? Nothing. Let us collect them together in the middle of the cell. So light them, you. The turnkey fired the little pile, which blazed high and hot. Stooping again to come out at the low arched door, they left it burning, and retraced their way to the courtyard, seeming to recover their sense of hearing as they came down, until they were in the raging flood once more. They found it surging and tossing, in quest of Defarge himself. Saint Antoine was clamorous to have its wine shop keeper foremost in the guard upon the governor, who had defended the Bastille and shot the people. Otherwise, the governor would not be marched to the Hotel de Ville for judgment. Otherwise, the governor would escape, and the people's blood, suddenly of some value after many years of worthlessness, be unavenged. In the howling universe of passion and contention that seemed to encompass this grim old officer, conspicuous in his gray coat and red decoration, there was but one quite steady figure, and that was a woman's. "See, there is my husband," she cried, pointing him out. "See Defarge." She stood immovable close to the grim old officer, and remained immovable close to him through the streets, as Defarge and the rest bore him along, remained immovable close to him when he was got near his destination, and began to be struck at from behind, remained immovable close to him when the long gathering rain of stabs and blows fell heavy, was so close to him when he dropped dead under it, that, suddenly animated, she put her foot upon his neck, and with her cruel knife, long ready, hewed off his head. The hour was come when Saint Antoine was to execute his horrible idea of hoisting up men for lamps to show what he could be and do. Saint Antoine's blood was up, and the blood of tyranny and domination by the iron hand was down on the steps of the Hotel de Ville, where the governor's body lay, down on the sole of the shoe of Madame Defarge, where she had trodden on the body to steady it for mutilation. Lower the lamp yonder," cried Saint Antoine, after glaring round for a new means of death. "Here is one of his soldiers to be left on guard." The swinging sentinel was posted, and the sea rushed on. The sea of black and threatening waters, and of destructive upheaving of wave against wave, whose depths were yet unfathomed and whose forces were yet unknown. The remorseless sea of turbulently swaying shapes, voices of vengeance, and faces hardened in the furnaces of suffering until the touch of pity could make no mark on them. But in the ocean of faces, where every fierce and furious expression was in vivid life, there were two groups of faces, each 7 in number, so fixedly contrasting with the rest, that never did sea roll which bore more memorable wrecks with it. 7 faces of prisoners, suddenly released by the storm that had burst their tomb, were carried high overhead, all scared, all lost, all wondering and amazed, as if the last day were come, and those who rejoiced around them were lost spirits. Other 7 faces there were, carried higher, 7 dead faces, whose drooping eyelids and half-seen eyes awaited the last day. Impassive faces, yet with a suspended, not an abolished, expression on them. Faces, rather, in a fearful pause, as having yet to raise the dropped lids of the eyes, and bear witness with the bloodless lips. Thou didst it. Cabby, thank you for following. Welcome in. 7 prisoners released, 7 gory heads on pikes, the keys of the accursed fortress of the 8 strong towers, some discovered letters and other memorials of prisoners of old time, long dead of broken hearts. Such and such like the loudly echoing footsteps of Saint Antoine escort through the Paris streets in mid-July 1789. Now, heaven defeat the fancy of Lucie Darnay, and keep these feet far out of her life, for they are headlong, mad, and dangerous. And in the years so long after the breaking of the cask at Defarge's wine shop door, they are not easily purified when once stained red. Alrighty, that was chapter 21. Hey. I'm considering reheating my tea, because it's kind of cold at this point. But I'm gonna hold off actually. Alrighty, we will jump right in to chapter 22. The Sea Still Rises. Haggard Saint Antoine had only one exultant week in which to soften his modicum of hard and bitter bread to such extent as he could, with the relish of fraternal embraces and congratulations, when Madame Defarge sat at her counter as usual, presiding over the customers. Madame Defarge wore no rose in her head, for the great brotherhood of spies had become, even in one short week, extremely chary, not sure about that word, of trusting themselves to the saint's mercies. The lamps across his streets had a portentously elastic swing with them. Madame Defarge, with her arms folded, sat in the morning light and heat, contemplating the wine shop and the street. In both, there were several knots of loungers, squalid and miserable, but now with a manifest sense of power enthroned on their distress. The raggedest nightcap, awry on the wretchedest head, had this crooked significance in it. I know how hard it has grown for me, the wearer of this, to support life in myself. But do you know how easy it has grown for me, the wearer of this, to destroy life in you? Every lean, bare arm that had been without work before had this work always ready for it now that it could strike. The fingers of the knitting women were vicious, with the experience that they could tear. There was a change in the appearance of Saint Antoine. The image had been hammering into this for hundreds of years, and the last finishing blows had told mightily on the expression. Madame Defarge sat observing it with such suppressed approval as was to be desired in the leader of the Saint Antoine women. One of her sisterhood knitted beside her. The short, rather plump wife of a starved grocer, and the mother of 2 children withal, this lieutenant had already earned the complimentary name of the Vengeance. "Hark," said the Vengeance. "Listen, then, who comes?" As if a train of powder laid from the outermost bound of Saint Antoine Quarter to the wine shop door had been suddenly fired, a fast-spreading murmur came rushing along. "It is Defarge," said Madame. "Silence, patriots." Defarge came in breathless, pulled off a red cap he wore, and looked around him. "Listen, everywhere," said Madame again. "Listen to him." Defarge stood, panting, against a background of eager eyes and open mouths, formed outside the door. All those within the wine shop had sprung to their feet. "Say then, my husband, what is it?" "News from the other world." "How then?" cried Madame. I say Madame differently every time. Contemptuously. "The other world? Does everybody here recall old Boulon, who told the famished people that they might eat grass and who died and went to hell?" "Everybody," from all throats. The news is of him. He is among us. Among us, from the universal throat again. And dead? Not dead. He feared us so much, and with reason, that he caused himself to be represented as dead, and had a grand mock funeral. But they have found him alive, hiding in the country, and have brought him in. I have seen him but now, on his way to the Hotel de Ville, a prisoner. I have said that he had reason to fear us. Say all, had he reason? I go take shower and shit like that. Have fun, Dylan. Thank you for hanging out and being here. Enjoy your shower and your night. Wretched old sinner of more than 80 years and 10, if he had never known it yet, he would have known it in his heart of hearts if he could have heard the answering cry. A moment of profound silence followed. Defarge and his wife looked steadfastly at one another. The Vengeance stooped, and the jar of a drum was heard as she moved it at her feet behind the counter. "Patriots," said Defarge in a determined voice. "Are we ready?" Instantly Madame Defarge's knife was in her girdle. The drum was beating in the streets, as if it and a drummer had flown together by magic, and the Vengeance, uttering terrific shrieks and flinging her arms about her head like all the 40 Furies at once, was tearing from house to house, rousing the women. The men were terrible in the bloody-minded anger with which they looked from windows, caught up what arms they had, and came pouring down into the streets. But the women were a sight to chill the boldest. From such household occupations as their bare poverty yielded, from their children, from their aged and their sick crouching on the bare ground famished and naked, they ran out with streaming hair, urging one another and themselves to madness with the wildest cries and actions. Villain Foulon was taken, my sister. Old Foulon taken, my mother. Miscreant Foulon taken, my daughter. Then a score of others ran into the midst of these, beating their breasts, tearing their hair, and screaming, "Foulon alive! Foulon who told the starving people they might eat grass! Foulon who told my old father that he might eat grass when I had no bread to give him! Foulon who told my baby it might suck grass when these breasts were dry with want! O Mother of God, this Foulon! O Heaven, our suffering! Hear me, my dead baby and my withered father. I swear on my knees, on these stones, to avenge you on Foulon. Husbands and brothers and young men, give us the blood of Foulon, give us the head of Foulon, give us the heart of Foulon, give us the body and soul of Foulon. Rend Foulon to pieces, and dig him into the ground, that grass may grow from him." With these cries, numbers of the women, lashed into blind frenzy, whirled about, striking and tearing at their own friends, until they dropped into a passionate swoon, and were only saved by the men belonging to them from being trampled underfoot. Nevertheless, not a moment was lost, not a moment. This Foulon was at the Hotel de Ville and might be loosed. Never, if Saint Antoine knew his own sufferings, insults, and wrongs. Armed men and women flocked out of the quarter so fast, and drew even these last dregs after them with such a force of suction, that within a quarter of an hour there was not a human creature in Saint Antoine's bosom but a few old crones and the wailing children. No, they were all by that time choking the hall of examination, where this old man, ugly and wicked, was, and overflowing into the adjacent open space and streets. The Defarges, husband and wife, the Vengeance, and Jacques III were in the first press, and at no great distance from him in the hall. "See," cried Madame, pointing with her knife. "See the old villain bound with ropes. That was well done to tie a bunch of grass upon his back, ha! That was well done. Let him eat it now." Madame put her knife under her arm and clapped her hands as at a play. The people immediately behind Madame Defarge, explaining the cause of her satisfaction to those behind them, and to those again explaining to others, and those to others, the neighboring streets resounded with the clapping of hands. Similarly, during 2 or 3 hours of drawl, and the winnowing of many bushels of words, Madame Defarge's frequent expressions of impatience were taken up, with marvelous quickness, at a distance, the more readily because certain men who had by some wonderful exercise of agility climbed up the external architecture to look in from the windows knew Madame Defarge well, and acted as a telegraph between her and the crowd outside the building. Thank you for lurking, Brett. I appreciate it. I hope you're well. At length, the sun rose so high that it struck a kindly ray, as of hope or protection, directly down upon the old prisoner's head. The favor was too much to bear. In an instant, the barrier of dust and chaff that had stood surprisingly long went to the winds, and Saint Antoine had got him. It was known directly to the furthest confines of the crowd. Defarge had but sprung over a railing and a table, and folded the miserable wretch in a deadly embrace. Madame Defarge had but followed and turned her hand in one of the ropes with which he was tied. The Vengeance and Jacques III were not yet up with them, and the men at the windows had not yet swooped into the hall, like birds of prey from their high perches, when the cry seemed to go up all over the city, "Bring him out, bring him to the lamp." Down and up, and head foremost on the steps of the buildings, now on his knees, now on his feet, now on his back, dragged and struck at, and stifled by the bunches of grass and straw that were thrust into his face by hundreds of hands, torn, bruised, panting, bleeding, yet always entreating and beseeching for mercy. Now full of vehement agony of action, with a small clear space about him as the people drew one another back that they might see. Now a log of dead wood drawn through a forest of legs, he was hauled to the nearest street corner, where one of the fatal lamps swung. And there Madame Defarge let him go, as a cat might have done to a mouse, and silently and composedly looked at him while they made ready, and while he besought her, the women passionately screeching at him all the time, and the men sternly calling out to have him killed with grass in his mouth. Once he went aloft, and the rope broke, and they caught him shrieking. Twice he went aloft, and the rope broke, and they caught him shrieking. Then the rope was merciful, and held him, and his head was soon upon a pike, with grass enough in the mouth for all Saint Antoine to dance at the sight of. Nor was this the end of the day's bad work, for Saint Antoine so shouted and danced his angry blood up that it boiled again, on hearing, when the day closed in, that the son-in-law of the dispatched, another of the people's enemies and insulters, was coming into Paris under a guard 500 strong, in cavalry alone. Saint Antoine wrote his crimes on flaring sheets of paper, seized him, would have torn him out of the breast of an army to bear Foulon company, set his head and heart on pikes, and carried the 3 spoils of the day in wolf procession through the streets. Hi Waffle, how are you? Welcome in. Not before dark night did the men and women come back to the children, wailing and breadless. Then the miserable bakers' shops were beset by long files of them, patiently waiting to buy bad bread. And while they waited with stomachs faint and empty, they beguiled the time by embracing one another on the triumphs of the day, and achieving them again in gossip. Gradually, these strings of ragged people shortened and frayed away, and then poor lights began to shine in high windows, and slender fires were made in the streets, at which neighbors cooked in common, afterwards supping at their doors. Scanty and insufficient suppers those, and innocent of meat, as of most other sauce to wretched bread. Yet human fellowship infused some nourishment into the flinty viands, and struck some sparks of cheerfulness out of them. Fathers and mothers who had had their full share in the worst of the day played gently with their meager children, and lovers, with such a world around them and before them, loved and hoped. It was almost morning when Defarge's wine shop parted with its last knot of customers, and Monsieur Defarge said to Madame his wife, in husky tones, while fastening the door, "At last it is come, my dear." "Well," returned Madame, "almost." Saint Antoine slept, the Defarges slept, even the Vengeance slept with her starved grocer, and the drum was at rest. The drums was the only voice in Saint Antoine that blood and hurry had not changed. The Vengeance, as custodian of the drum, could have wakened him up and had the same speech out of him as before the Bastille fell, or old Foulon was seized. Not so with the hoarse tones of the men and women in Saint Antoine's bosom. Alright, that was chapter 22. I'm going to get some more water, and I might warm up my tea and go to the bathroom. So I'll be back in a few minutes. I will leave you guys with the Spotify playing quietly. I'll be right back. Gotta not drop all my stuff on my way out. Miss you already. Miss you guys too. I'll be back soon. I'm back. The chair. Thank you. I was talking for so long. Anyways, I'm back. While we're paused, there was a streamer. she's mainly a YouTuber, but I mean, she does also stream on Twitch. She did an April Fool's Day prank on Twitch where she like went live but pretended like she didn't know she was live. So she was kind of just like sitting there and the stream went live and she was just like typing and not saying anything. She started like walking around her room and just like doing really weird shit. So funny. Hi Vile, how are you doing? Here's your head pats, welcome in. I found out that the actor who plays John Marston started an OnlyFans for the sole sake of showing off him getting ripped. I mean, I feel like he'll do well. It's like people know who he is. I feel like just men in general can do well on OnlyFans because there's probably not as many of them. What's the book you're reading? I am reading Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The title is down here if you want to see it written out. If you want to look it up. It's good. We're pretty far into it, so apologies to anybody who might just be joining us today and missed the entire first half of the book. But yeah, we'll get started in just another minute. Continue on. My throat's kind of hurting a little, so we probably won't go super late tonight. It's still hurting, unfortunately. But the tea is helping, so that's good. Alrighty. Let us continue with chapter 23, Fire Rises. There was a change on the village where the fountain fell, and where the mender of roads went forth daily to hammer out of the stones on the highway such morsels of bread as might serve for patches, to hold his poor ignorant soul and his poor reduced body together. The prison on the crag was not so dominant as of yore. There were soldiers to guard it, but not many. There were officers to guard the soldiers, but not one of them knew what his men would do beyond this, that it would probably not be what he was ordered. Far and wide lay a ruined country, yielding nothing but desolation. Every green leaf, every blade of grass, and blade of grain was as shriveled and poor as the miserable people. Everything was bowed down, dejected, oppressed, and broken. Habitations, fences, domesticated animals, men, women, children, and the soil that bore them, all worn out. Monsignor, often a most worthy individual gentleman, was a national blessing, gave a chivalrous tone to things, was a polite example of luxurious and shining life, and a great deal more to equal purpose. Nevertheless, Monsignor as a class had, somehow or other, brought things to this. Strange that creation, designed expressly for Monsignor, should be so soon wrung dry and squeezed out. There must be something short-sighted in the eternal arrangements, surely. Thus it was, however, and the last drop of blood having been extracted from the flints, and the last screw of the rack having been turned so often that its purchase crumbled, and it now turned and turned with nothing to bite, Monsignor began to run away from a phenomenon so low and unaccountable. But this was not the change on the village, and on many a village like it. For scores of years gone by, Monsignor had squeezed it and wrung it, and had seldom graced it with his presence except for the pleasures of the chase, now found in hunting the people, now found in hunting the beasts, for whose preservation Monsignor made edifying spaces of barbarous and barren wilderness. No, the change consisted in the appearance of strange faces of low caste, rather than in the disappearance of the high caste, chiseled and otherwise beautified and beautifying features of Monsignor. For in these times, as the mentor of roads worked, solitary, in the dust, not often troubling himself to reflect that dust he was and to dust he must return, being for the most part too much occupied in thinking how little he had for supper and how much more he would eat if he had it. In these times, as he raised his eyes from his lonely labor and viewed the prospect, he would see some rough figure approaching on foot, the like of which was once a rarity in those parts, but was now a frequent presence. As it advanced, the mender of roads would discern without surprise that it was a shaggy-haired man of almost barbarian aspect, tall, in wooden shoes that were clumsy even to the eyes of a mender of roads, grim, rough, swart, steeped in the mud and dust of many highways, dank with the marshy moisture of many low grounds, sprinkled with the thorns and leaves and moss of many byways through woods. Such a man came upon him, like a ghost, at noon in the July weather, as he sat on his heap of stones under a bank, taking such shelter as he could get from a shower of hail. The man looked at him, looked at the village in the hollow, at the mill, and at the prison on the crag. When he had identified these objects and what benighted mind he had, he said, in a dialect that was just intelligible, "How goes it, Jacques?" "All well, Jacques." "Touch then." They joined hands, and the man sat down on the heap of stones. "No dinner?" "Nothing but supper now," said the mender of roads, with a hungry face. "It is the fashion," growled the man. "I meet no dinner anywhere." He took out a blackened pipe, filled it, lighted it with flint and steel, pulled at it until it was in a bright glow, then suddenly held it from him and dropped something into it from between his finger and thumb that blazed and went out in a puff of smoke. "Touch then." It was the turn of the mender of roads to say at this time, after observing these operations. They again joined hands. "Tonight?" said the mender of roads. "Tonight," said the man, putting the pipe in his mouth. "Where?" "Here." He and the mender of roads sat on the heap of stones looking silently at one another, with the hail driving in between them like a pygmy charge of bayonets, until the sky began to clear over the village. "Show me," said the traveler then, moving to the brow of the hill. "See," returned the mender of roads, with extended finger. "You go down here and straight through the street and past the fountain." "To the devil with all that," interrupted the other, rolling his eye over the landscape. "I go through no streets and past no fountains." "Well?" "Well, about 2 leagues beyond the summit of that hill above the village." "Good. When do you cease to work?" "At sunset." "Will you wake me before departing? I have walked 2 nights without resting. Let me finish my pipe, and I shall sleep like a child. Will you wake me?" "Surely." The wayfarer smoked his pipe out, put it in his breast, slipped off his great wooden shoes, and lay down on his back on the heap of stones. He was fast asleep directly. As the road mender plied his dusty labor, and the hail clouds rolling away revealed bright bars and streaks of sky which were responded to by silver gleams upon the landscape, the little man, who wore a red cap now in place of his blue one, seemed fascinated by the figure on the heap of stones. Ryder, thank you so much for 12 months. That's a whole year. I appreciate it so much. Give me a list of cosplay on Twitter. I'll check it out later, Ryder. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well tonight. His eyes were so often turned towards it that he used his tools mechanically, and one would have said, to very poor account. The bronze face, the shaggy black hair and beard, the coarse woolen red cap, the rough medley dress of homespun stuff and hairy skins of beasts, the powerful frame attenuated by spare living, and the sullen and desperate compression of the lips in sleep, inspired the mender of roads with awe. The traveler had traveled far, and his feet were footsore, and his ankles chafed and bleeding. His great shoes, stuffed with leaves and grass, had been heavy to drag over the many long leagues, and his clothes were chafed into holes, as he himself was into sores. Stooping down beside him, the road mender tried to get a peep at secret weapons in his breast or where not, but in vain, for he slept with his arms crossed upon him, and set as resolutely as his lips. Fortified towns with their stockades, guardhouses, gates, trenches, and drawbridges seemed to the mender of roads to be so much air as against this figure. And when he lifted his eyes from it to the horizon and looked around, he saw in his small fancy similar figures, stopped by no obstacle, tending to centers all over France. The man slept on, indifferent to showers of hail and intervals of brightness, to sunshine on his face and shadow, to the paltering lumps of dull ice on his body, and the diamonds into which the sun changed them, until the sun was low in the west and the sky was glowing. Then, the mender of roads, having got his tools together and all things ready to go down into the village, roused him. "Good," said the sleeper, rising on his elbow. 2 leagues beyond the summit of the hill? About. Good. The mender of roads went home, with the dust going on before him according to the set of the wind, and was soon at the fountain, squeezing himself in among the lean kine brought there to drink, and appearing even to whisper to them in his whispering to all the village. When the village had taken its poor supper, it did not creep to bed, as it usually did, but came out of doors again and remained there. A curious contagion of whispering was upon it, and also, when it gathered together at the fountain in the dark, another curious contagion of looking expectantly at the sky in one direction only. Monsieur Gabelle, chief functionary of the place, became uneasy, went out on his housetop alone, and looked in that direction too, glanced down from behind his chimneys at the darkening faces by the fountain below, and set word to the sacristan who kept the keys of the church, that there might be need to ring the tocsin by and by. The night deepened. The trees environing the old chateau, keeping its solitary state apart, moved in a rising wind, as though they threatened the pile of building massive and dark in the gloom. Up the 2 terrace flights of steps the rain ran wildly, and beat at the great door, like a swift messenger rousing those within. Uneasy rushes of wind went through the hall, among the old spears and knives, and passed lamenting up the stairs, and shook the curtains of the bed where the last marquis had slept. East, west, north, and south, through the woods, 4 heavy-treading, unkempt figures crushed the high grass and cracked the branches, striding on cautiously to come together in the courtyard. 4 lights broke out there and moved away in different directions, and all was black again. That's okay, Odin. Val. But not for long. Presently, the chateau began to make itself strangely visible by some light of its own, as though it were growing luminous. Then a flickering streak played behind the architecture of the front, picking out transparent places and showing where balustrades, arches, and windows were. Then it soared higher and grew broader and brighter. Soon, from a score of the great windows, flames burst forth, and the stone faces awakened, stared out of fire. A faint murmur arose about the house from the few people who were left there, and there was a saddling of a horse and riding away. There was spurring and splashing through the darkness, and bridle was drawn in the space by the village fountain, and the horse in a foam stood at Monsieur Gabelle's door. "Help, Gabelle, help, everyone!" The tocsin rang impatiently, but other help, if that were any, there was none. The mender of roads and 250 particular friends stood with folded arms at the fountain, looking at the pillar of fire in the sky. "It must be 40 feet high," said they grimly, and never moved. Jerusalem, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. You're doing well. The rider from the chateau and the horse in a foam clattered away through the village and galloped up the stony steep to the prison on the crag. At the gate, a group of officers were looking at the fire, removed from them a group of soldiers. "Help, gentlemen, officers! The chateau is on fire. Valuable objects may be saved from the flames by timely aid. Help, help!" The officers looked toward the soldiers, who looked at the fire, gave no orders, and answered, with shrugs and biting of lips, "It must burn." Thank you for following as well, Star Princess. Welcome in. As the rider rattled down the hill again and through the street, the village was illuminating. The mender of roads and the 250 particular friends, inspired as one man and woman by the idea of lighting up, had darted into their houses and were putting candles in every dull little pane of glass. The general scarcity of everything occasioned candles to be borrowed in a rather peremptory manner of Monsieur Gabelle, and in a moment of reluctance and hesitation on that functionary's part, the mender of roads, once so submissive to authority, had remarked that carriages were good to make bonfires with, and that post horses would roast. The chateau was left to itself to flame and burn. In the roaring and raging of the conflagration, I just said that wrong, a red-hot wind, driving straight from the infernal regions, seemed to be blowing the edifice away. With the rising and falling of the blaze, the stone faces showed as if they were in torment. When great masses of stone and timber fell, the face with the 2 dints in the nose became obscured. Anon struggled out of the smoke again, as if it were the face of the cruel Marquis, burning at the stake and contending with the fire. The chateau burned. The nearest trees, laid hold of by the fire, scorched and shriveled. Trees at a distance, fired by the 4 fierce figures, begirt the blazing edifice with a new forest of smoke. Molten lead and iron boiled in the marble basin of the fountain. The water ran dry. The extinguisher tops of the towers vanished like ice before the heat, and trickled down into 4 rugged wells of flame. Great rents and splits branched out in the solid walls like crystallization. Stupefied birds wheeled about and dropped into the furnace. 4 fierce figures trudged away, east, west, north, and south, along the night-enshrouded roads, guided by the beacon they had lighted, towards their next destination. The illuminated village had seized hold of the tocsin, and, abolishing the lawful ringer, rang for joy. Not only that, but the village, light-headed with famine, fire, and bell-ringing, and bethinking itself that Monsieur Gabelle had to do with the collection of rent and taxes, though it was but a small installment of taxes, and no rent at all, that Gabelle had got in those latter days, became impatient for an interview with him, and, surrounding his house, summoned him to come forth for personal conference, whereupon Monsieur Gabelle did heavily bar his door and retired to hold counsel with himself. The result of that conference was that Gabelle again withdrew himself to his housetop behind his stack of chimneys, this time resolved, if his door were broken in, he was a small southern man of retaliative temperament, to pitch himself head foremost over the parapet and crush a man or two below. Beatron, thank you for the follow, welcome in. Probably, Monsieur Gabelle passed a long night up there, with the distant chateau for fire and candle, and the beating at his door, combined with the joy ringing for music, not to mention his having an illumined lamp slung across the road before his posting house gate, which the village showed a lively inclination to displace in his favor. A trying suspense to be passing a whole summer night on the brink of the black ocean, ready to take that plunge into it upon which Monsieur Gabelle had resolved. But, the friendly dawn appearing at last, and the rush candles of the village guttering out, the people happily dispersed, and Monsieur Gabelle came down, bringing his life with him for that while. Ill-omened. Thank you. I feel crazy. That little hyphen got me. Within 100 miles, and in the light of other fires, there were other functionaries less fortunate that night and other nights, whom the rising sun found hanging across once peaceful streets where they had been born and bred. Also, there were other villagers and townspeople less fortunate than the mender of roads and his fellows, upon whom the functionaries and soldiery turned with success, and whom they strung up in their turn. But the fierce figures were steadily wending east, west, north, and south, be that as it would, and whosoever hung, fire burned. The altitude of the gallows that would turn to water and quench it, no functionary, by any stretch of mathematics, was able to calculate successfully. Alright, we're on to chapter 24. This might be the last chapter of second book. Let me see. I think this is the last chapter of book 2, which is good. This might be the last chapter I read. Let me see how long it is. It looks kind of long. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to click all the way back. It's gonna take a while. Oh my goodness. Okay, maybe we aren't gonna read all of this. We're at 487. Uh-oh. Oh. Bear with. I don't know if there's like a... table of contents or something in this program. It's like 20 pages. Ugh, I don't know. Sorry, my chair just got really loud. I think we can let's start this. If we have to stop halfway through, maybe we will, if there's a good like break. I know it's been kind of short, but man, my throat hurt. But we'll start this. Alright, chapter 24, Drawn to the Lodestone Rock. In such risings of fire and risings of sea, the firm earth shaken by the rushes of an angry ocean which had now no ebb, but was always on the flow, higher and higher, to the terror and wonder of the beholders on the shore, 3 years of tempest were consumed. 3 more birthdays of little Lucy had been woven by the golden thread into the peaceful tissue of the life of her home. Many a night and many a day had its inmates listened to the echoes in the corner, with hearts that failed them when they heard the thronging feet. For the footsteps had become to their minds as the footsteps of a people, tumultuous under a red flag, and with their country declared in danger, changed into wild beasts, by terrible enchantment long persisted in. Monsignor, as a class, had dissociated himself from the phenomenon of his not being appreciated, of his being so little wanted in France, as to incur considerable danger of receiving his dismissal from it and this life together. Like the fabled rustic who raised the devil with infinite pains, and was so terrified at the sight of him that he could ask the enemy no question, but immediately fled. So Monsignor, after boldly reading the Lord's Prayer backwards for a great number of years, and performing many other potent spells for compelling the evil one, no sooner beheld him in his terrors than he took to his noble heels. The shining bull's-eye of the court was gone, or it would have been the mark for a hurricane of national bullets. It had never been a good eye to see with, had long had the mote in it of Lucifer's pride, Sardanapalus' luxury, and a mole's blindness, but it had dropped out and was gone. The court, from that exclusive inner circle to its outermost rotten ring of intrigue, corruption, and dissimulation, was all gone together. Royalty was gone, had been besieged in its palace and suspended when the last tidings came over. The August of the year 1792 was come, and Monsignor was by this time scattered far and wide. As was natural, the headquarters and great gathering place of Monsignor in London was Tellson's Bank. Spirits are supposed to haunt the places where their bodies most resorted, and Monsignor without a guinea haunted the spot where his guineas used to be. Moreover, it was the spot to which such French intelligence as was most to be relied upon came quickest. Again, Tellson's was a munificent house, and extended great liberality to old customers who had fallen from their high estate. Again, those nobles who had seen the coming storm in time, and anticipating plunder or confiscation, had made provident remittances to Tellson's, were always to be heard of there by their needy brethren. To which it must be added that every newcomer from France reported himself and his tidings at Tellson's, almost as a matter of course. For such variety of reasons, Tellson's was at that time, as to French intelligence, a kind of high exchange, and this was so well known to the public, and the inquiries made there were in consequence so numerous, that Tellson sometimes wrote the latest news out in a line or so, and posted it in the bank windows, for all who ran through Temple Bar to read. On a steaming, misty afternoon, Mr. Lorry sat at his desk, and Charles Darnay stood leaning on it, talking with him in a low voice. The penitential den, once set apart for interviews with the House, was now the news exchange, and was filled to overflowing. It was within half an hour or so of the time of closing. "But although you are the youngest man that ever lived," said Charles Darnay, rather hesitating, "I must still suggest to you—" "I understand. That I am too old," said Mr. Lorry. "Unsettled weather, a long journey, uncertain means of traveling, a disorganized country, a city that may not even be safe for you." "My dear Charles," said Mr. Lorry with cheerful confidence, "you touch some of the reasons for my going, not for my staying away. It is safe enough for me. Nobody will care to interfere with an old fellow of hard upon 80 when there are so many people there much better worth interfering with. As to its being a disorganized city, If it were not a disorganized city, there would be no occasion to send somebody from our house here to our house there, who knows the city and the business of old, and is in Tellson's confidence. As to the uncertain traveling, the long journey, and the winter weather, if I were not prepared to submit myself to a few inconveniences for the sake of Tellson's, after all these years, who ought to be? I wish I were going myself, said Charles Darnay, somewhat restlessly, and like one thinking aloud. Indeed, you are a pretty fellow to object and advise, exclaimed Mr. Lorry. You wish you were going yourself? And you a Frenchman born? You are a wise counselor. My dear Mr. Lorry, it is because I am a Frenchman born that the thought, which I did not mean to utter here, however, has passed through my mind often. One cannot help thinking, having had some sympathy for the miserable people, and having abandoned something to them, he spoke here in his formal, thoughtful manner, that one might be listened to, and might have the power to persuade to some restraint. Only last night, after you had left us, when I was talking to Lucy. When you were talking to Lucy, Mr. Lorry repeated. Yes, I wonder you are not ashamed to mention the name of Lucy, wishing you were going to France at this time of day. However, I am not going, said Charles Darnay with a smile. It is more to the purpose that you say you are. And I am, in plain reality. The truth is, my dear Charles, Mr. Lorry glanced at the distant house and lowered his voice. You can have no conception of the difficulty with which our business is transacted, and of the peril in which our books and papers over yonder are involved. The Lord above knows what the compromising consequences would be to numbers of people if some of our documents were seized or destroyed, and they might be, at any time, you know, for who could say that Paris is not set afire today or sacked tomorrow? Now, a judicious selection from these with the least possible delay, and the burying of them, or otherwise getting of them out of harm's way, is within the power, without loss of precious time, of scarcely anyone but myself, if anyone. And shall I hang back when Tellson's knows this and says this? Tellson's, whose bread I have eaten these 60 years, because I am a little stiff about the joints? Why, I am a boy, sir, to half a dozen old codgers here. How I admire the gallantry of your youthful spirit, Mr. Lorry. Tut, nonsense, sir. And my dear Charles, said Mr. Lorry, glancing at the house again, you are to remember that getting things out of Paris at this present time, no matter what things, is next to an impossibility. Papers and precious matters were this very day brought to us here. I speak in strict confidence. It is not business-like to whisper it even to you. By the strangest bearers you can imagine, every one of whom had his head hanging on by a single hair as he passed the barriers. At another time, our parcels would come and go as easily as in business-like old England, but now everything is stopped. And do you really go tonight? I really go tonight, for the case has become too pressing to admit of delay. And do you take no one with you? All sorts of people have been proposed to me, but I will have nothing to say to any of them. I intend to take Jerry. Jerry has been my bodyguard on Sunday nights for a long time past, and I am used to him. Nobody will suspect Jerry of being anything but an English bulldog, or of having any design in his head but to fly at anybody who touches his master. I must say again that I heartily admire your gallantry and youthfulness. I must say again, nonsense, nonsense. When I have executed this little commission, I shall perhaps accept Tellson's proposal to retire and live at my ease. Time enough then to think about growing old. This dialogue had taken place at Mr. Lorry's usual desk, with Monsignor swarming within a yard or two of it, boastful of what he would do to avenge himself on the rascal people before long. It was too much the way of Monseigneur under his reverses as a refugee, and it was much too much the way of native British orthodoxy to talk of this terrible revolution as if it were the only harvest ever known under the skies that had not been sown, as if nothing had ever been done or omitted to be done that had led to it, as if observers of the wretched millions in France and of the misused and perverted resources that should have made them prosperous had not seen it inevitably coming years before, and had not in plain words recorded what they saw. Such vaporing, combined with the extravagant plots of Monseigneur for the restoration of a state of things that had utterly exhausted itself, and worn out heaven and earth as well as itself, was hard to be endured without some remonstrance by any sane man who knew the truth, and it was such vaporing all about his ears, like a troublesome confusion of blood in his own head, added to a latent uneasiness in his mind which had already made Charles Darnay restless, and which still kept him so. Among the talkers was Stryver of the King's Bench Bar, far on his way to state promotion, and therefore loud on the theme, broaching to Monseigneur his devices for blowing the people up and exterminating them from the face of the earth, and doing without them, and for accomplishing many similar objects akin in their nature to the abolition of eagles by sprinkling salt on the tails of the race. Him Darnay heard with a particular feeling of objection, and Darnay stood divided between going away, that he might hear no more, and remaining to interpose his word, and the thing that was to be went on to shape itself out. The house approached Mr. Lorry, and laying a soiled and unopened letter before him, asked if he had yet discovered any traces of the person to whom it was addressed. The house laid the letter down so close to Darnay that he saw the direction, the more quickly because it was his own right name. The address, turned into English, ran, very pressing, to Monseigneur heretofore the Marquis Saint Evremond of France, confided to the cares of Messrs. Telson and Company, bankers, London, England. On the marriage morning, Dr. Manette had made it his one urgent and express request to Charles Darnay that the secret of this name should be, unless he, the doctor, dissolved the obligation, kept inviolate between them. Nobody else knew it to be his name. His own wife had no suspicion of the fact. Mr. Lorry could have none. "No," said Mr. Lorry in reply to the house. "I have referred it, I think, to everybody now here, and no one can tell me where this gentleman is to be found." The hands of the clock verging upon the hour of closing the bank, there was a general set of the current of talkers past Mr. Lorry's desk. He held the letter out inquiringly, and Monseigneur looked at it in the person of this plotting and indignant refugee, and Monseigneur looked at it in the person of that plotting and indignant refugee, and this, that, and the other. All had something disparaging to say, in French or in English, concerning the Marquis who was not to be found. Nephew, I believe, but in any case degenerate successor, of the polished Marquis who was murdered, said one. Happy to say I never knew him. A craven who abandoned his post, said another. This monsieur had been got out of Paris, legs uppermost and half suffocated, in a load of hay, some years ago. Infected with the new doctrines, said a third, eyeing the direction through his glass in passing. Set himself in opposition to the last Marquis, abandoned the estates when he inherited them, and left them to the ruffian herd. They will recompense him now, I hope, as he deserves. Hey, cried the blatant Stryver, did he though? Is that the sort of fellow? Let us look at his infamous name, damn the fellow. Darnay, unable to restrain himself any longer, touched Mr. Stryver on the shoulder and said, "I know the fellow." "Do you, by Jupiter?" said Strider. "I am sorry for it." "Why?" "Why, Mr. Darnay? Do you hear what he did?" "Don't ask why in these times." "But I do ask why." "Then I tell you again, Mr. Darnay, I am sorry for it. I am sorry to hear you putting any such extraordinary questions. Here is a fellow who, infected by the most pestilent and blasphemous code of devilry that ever was known, abandoned his property to the vilest scum of the earth that ever did murder by wholesale. And you ask me why I am sorry that a man who instructs youth knows him? Well, but I'll answer you. I am sorry because I believe there is contamination in such a scoundrel. That's why. Mindful of the secret, Darnay with great difficulty checked himself and said, "You may not understand the gentleman." "I understand how to put you in a corner, Mr. Darnay," said Bully Stryver, "and I'll do it. If this fellow is a gentleman, I don't understand him. You may tell him so with my compliments. You may also tell him, from me, that after abandoning his worldly goods and position to this butcherly mob, I wonder he is not at the head of them. But no, gentlemen," said Stryver, looking all around and snapping his fingers, "I know something of human nature, and I tell you that you'll never find a fellow like this fellow, trusting himself to the mercies of such precious protégés. No, gentlemen, he'll always show 'em a clean pair of heels very early in the scuffle and sneak away." With those words and a final snap of his fingers, Mr. Stryver shouldered himself into Fleet Street, amidst the general approbation of his hearers. Mr. Lorry and Charles Darnay were left alone at the desk, in the general departure from the bank. "Will you take charge of the letter?" said Mr. Lorry. "You know where to deliver it?" "I do." "Will you undertake to explain that we suppose it to have been addressed here, on the chance of our knowing where to forward it, and that it has been here some time?" "I will do so." "Do you start for Paris from here?" "From here at 8. I will come back to see you off." Very ill at ease with himself and with Stryver and most other men, Darnay made the best of his way into the quiet of the temple, opened the letter, and read it. These were its contents. Prison of the Abbey, Paris, June 21st, 1792. Monsieur heretofore the Marquis. After having long been in danger of my life at the hands of the village, I have been seized with great violence and indignity, and brought a long journey on foot to Paris. On the road I have suffered a great deal. Nor is that all. My house has been destroyed, razed to the ground. The crime for which I am imprisoned, Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, and for which I shall be summoned before the tribunal, and shall lose my life without your so generous help, is, they tell me, treason against the majesty of the people. In that I have acted against them for an emigrant, it is in vain I represent that I have acted for them and not against, according to your commands. It is in vain I represent that, before the sequestration of immigrant property, I had remitted the imposts they had ceased to pay, that I had collected no rent, that I had had recourse to no process. The only response is that I have acted for an immigrant, and where is that immigrant? Ah, most gracious Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, where is that immigrant? I cry in my sleep, where is he? I demand of heaven, will he not come to deliver me? No answer. Ah, Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, I send my desolate cry across the sea, hoping it may perhaps reach your ears through the great bank of Tilson known at Paris. For the love of heaven, of justice, of generosity, of the honor of your noble name, I supplicate you, Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, to secure and release me. My fault is that I have been true to you. O Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, I pray you be true to me. From this prison here of horror, whence I every hour tend nearer and nearer to destruction, I send you, Monsieur heretofore the Marquis, the assurance of my dolorous and unhappy service. Your afflicted Gabelle. The latent uneasiness in Darnay's mind was roused to vigorous life by this letter. The peril of an old servant and a good one, whose only crime was fidelity to himself and his family, stared him so reproachfully in the face that, as he walked to and fro in the temple considering what to do, he almost hid his face from the passer-by. He knew very well that in his horror of the deed which had culminated the bad deeds and bad reputation of the old family house, in his resentful suspicions of his uncle, and in the aversion with which his conscience regarded the crumbling fabric that he was supposed to uphold, he had acted imperfectly. He knew very well that in his love for Lucy, his renunciation of his social place, though by no means new to his own mind, had been hurried and incomplete. He knew that he ought to have systematically worked it out and supervised it, and that he had meant to do it, and that it had never been done. The happiness of his own chosen English home, the necessity of being always actively employed, the swift changes and troubles of the time which had followed on one another so fast, that the events of this week annihilated the immature plans of last week, and the events of the week following made all new again. He knew very well that to the force of these circumstances he had yielded, not without disquiet, but still without continuous and accumulating resistance, that he had watched the times for a time of action, and that they had shifted and struggled until the time had gone by, and the nobility were trooping from France by every highway and byway, and their property was in course of confiscation and destruction, and their very names were blotting out, was as well known to himself as it could be to any new authority in France that might impeach him for it. But he had oppressed no man. He had imprisoned no man. He was so far from having harshly exacted payment of his dues that he had relinquished them of his own will, thrown himself on a world with no favor in it, won his own private place there, and earned his own bread. Monsieur Gabelle had held the impoverished and involved estate on written instructions to spare the people, to give them what little there was to give, such fuel as the heavy creditors would let them have in the winter, and such produce as could be saved from the same grip in the summer. And no doubt he had put the fact in plea and proof for his own safety, so that it could not but appear now. This favored the desperate resolution Charles Darnay had begun to make, that he would go to Paris. Yes, like the mariner in the old story, the winds and streams had driven him within the influence of the lodestone rock, and it was drawing him to itself, and he must go. Everything that arose before his mind drifted him on, faster and faster, more and more steadily, to the terrible attraction. His latent uneasiness had been that bad aims were being worked out in his own unhappy land by bad instruments, and that he who could not fail to know that he was better than they was not there, trying to do something to stay bloodshed and assert the claims of mercy and humanity. With this uneasiness half stifled and half reproaching him, he had been brought to the pointed comparison of himself with the brave old gentleman in whom duty was so strong. Upon that comparison, injurious to himself, had instantly followed the sneers of Monseigneur, which had stung him bitterly, and those of Stryver, which above all were coarse and galling for old reasons. Upon those had followed Gabelle's letter, the appeal of an innocent prisoner in danger of death to his justice, honor, and good name. His resolution was made. He must go to Paris. Yes, the lodestone rock was drawing him, and he must sail on until he struck. He knew of no rock. He saw hardly any danger. The intention with which he had done what he had done, even although he had left it incomplete, presented it before him in an aspect that would be gratefully acknowledged in France on his presenting himself to assert it. Then, that glorious vision of doing good, which is so often the sanguine mirage of so many good minds, arose before him, and he even saw himself in the illusion with some influence to guide this raging revolution that was running so fearfully wild. Can't with the Valraven and Odin interactions. As he walked to and fro with his resolution made, he considered that neither Lucy nor her father must know of it until he was gone. Lucy should be spared the pain of separation, and her father, always reluctant to turn his thoughts towards the dangerous grounds of old, should come to the knowledge of the step as a step taken, and not in the balance of suspense and doubt. How much of the incompleteness of his situation was referable to her father, through the painful anxiety to avoid reviving old associations of France in his mind, he did not discuss with himself. But that circumstance, too, had had its influence in his course. He walked to and fro with thoughts very busy, until it was time to return to Tellson's and to take leave of Mr. Lorry. As soon as he arrived in Paris, he would present himself to this old friend, but he must say nothing of his intention now. A carriage with post horses was ready at the bank door, and Jerry was booted and equipped. "I have delivered that letter," said Charles Darnay to Mr. Lorry. "I would not consent to your being charged with any written answer, but perhaps you will take a verbal one?" "That I will, and readily," said Mr. Lorry, "if it is not dangerous." "Not at all, though it is to a prisoner in the Abbey." "What's his name?" said Mr. Lorry, with his open pocketbook in hand. "Gabelle." "Gabelle? And what is the message to the unfortunate Gabelle in prison?" "Simply that he has received the letter and will come." "Any time mentioned?" "He will start upon his journey tomorrow night." "Any person mentioned?" "No." He helped Mr. Lorry to wrap himself in a number of coats and cloaks, and went out with him from the warm atmosphere of the old bank into the misty air of Fleet Street. "My love to Lucy and to little Lucy," said Mr. Lorry at parting, "and take precious care of them till I come back." Charles Darnay shook his head and doubtfully smiled as the carriage rolled away. That night, it was the 14th of August, he sat up late and wrote 2 fervent letters. One was to Lucy, explaining the strong obligation he was under to go to Paris, and showing her at length the reasons that he had for feeling confident that he could become involved in no personal danger there. The other was to the doctor, confiding Lucy and their dear child to his care, and dwelling on the same topics with the strongest assurances. To both he wrote that he would dispatch letters in proof of his safety immediately after his arrival. Sager, I hope I said it right. Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. It was a hard day, that day of being among them, with the first reservation of their joint lives on his mind. It was a hard matter to preserve the innocent deceit of which they were profoundly unsuspicious. But an affectionate glance at his wife, so happy and busy, made him resolute not to tell her what impended. He had been half moved to do it, So strange it was to him to act in anything without her quiet aid. And the day passed quickly. Early in the evening, he embraced her and her scarcely less dear namesake, pretending that he would return by and by. An imaginary engagement took him out, and he had secreted a valise of clothes ready. And so he emerged into the heavy mist of the heavy streets with a heavier heart. The unseen force was drawing him fast to itself now, and all the tides and winds were setting straight and strong towards it. He left his 2 letters with the trusty porter to be delivered half an hour before midnight, and no sooner, took horse for Dover and began his journey. For the love of heaven, of justice, of generosity, of the honor of your noble name, was the poor prisoner's cry with which he strengthened his sinking heart as he left all that was dear on earth behind him and floated away for the Lodestone Rock. The end of the 2nd book. Oh my gosh. Oh. We finished. Okay, that chapter went by faster than I thought. I don't know why I thought it was going to take so long. We finished the book 2. I can't believe we're already on to book 3. That's crazy. I feel like we're kind of flying through this, but we've also been reading it for like a month, so maybe we're really not flying through it, but it feels like we are. Alright, guys, I am gonna wrap up there. I know this has been somewhat of a shorter stream. I've been doing, I feel like I had a shorter stream last week too. Was that like last Wednesday? Maybe I'm like getting sick or something, but my throat just kind of hurts, so I'm gonna go to Betty Bye so I can hopefully not feel sick. But I will be back next Monday continuing our reading. So if you are enjoying it, if you're here for the soft-spoken reading, I do this every Monday, starting at 7:30 p.m. Central. So yeah, you're having so much fun that time. Just like, that's kind of it. The reading streams like weirdly go by really fast because I just like get in such a groove in my mind, Vile, that it's like, oh shit, it's been like 3 hours, you know. I know it hasn't been that long tonight, but alright, let's see if we can find someone to raid. She just wants to play Balatro. I actually would if I like actually, my throat genuinely hurts. If I didn't want to go to bed, I would be playing Balatro. I won't. I'm glad, Vile. That makes me happy. That's all I can ask, is that you get something out of it. Good night, Legendary. I won't play Balatro. And if I do play Balatro, I'll go on invisible so you can't yell at me. Let's see. Who is streaming right now? Enchanting Bunny. Have we rated them before? Or Miss... That was loud. Or Miss Blue. Have we rated them before? Let's see. I think we might have rated Bunny. Yellow, hello, welcome in. How are you doing? I'm sorry, you came in right at the end of stream. We're about to raid out though. What are we doing here, girl? We were reading, but now we are leaving. But we're gonna go raid. The second stream I go at the end. I'm so sorry. I will be live on Wednesday. Thank you for following. I appreciate it. That's so sweet. I will be live on Wednesday. It'll be a very different stream than this was. I will be continuing my playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, talking at a normal volume. So keep that in mind if you're just here for the chill ASMR. Wednesday I will be talking louder. And then we'll be live again on Saturday with our usual Gardic phone. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Let's get this raid started. This person is doing live ASMR and lo-fi. So kind of similar to this. I'm assuming they're probably like whispering, so this might be more traditional ASMR vibes, so keep that in mind. But please grab one of the raid messages if you're not asleep. If you have the sub emotes, you can do the one with the little dancing fox. If you don't, do the one with the little missile. Also, it looks like this channel is intended for mature audiences, has a follower or subscriber only chat. We might have rated them before with follower only chat, but if you're not 18, this looks like it's an 18 plus chat. So keep that in mind, and you might need to follow if you want to send the raid message. Just keep that in mind. Thanks for helping other streamers. Of course, I love raiding. Raiding is like one of the most fun parts of streaming. Alright guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you guys. Take care of yourselves. Drink your water, eat your food, go get some rest if you need, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Good night.